Hi, my name is David Hunt, and I'm excited to share with you about the Empty Shoes grant proposal. And we're looking at some of the options of what we can do to help in Latin America specifically. The Empty Shoes Ministry has been partnering with higher education since 2013, and I'm really thinking of Cuba as I'm presenting a lot of this because in 2 weeks that's where I'll be headed. Some of the conditions have gotten even more difficult than before. The teacher that I've been coaching down there is telling me that he's getting about 2 hours of electricity a day. And so even when I send him an email or send him a digital resource that he needs to download and read, if the electricity happens to be on at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's when he is getting up to do his class preparation to help be one of the teachers for this program that we're looking at. I'm amazed by the opportunities that are built into this because when I teach with a group that's at this level, master's level students, they turn around and pass it on to all the other levels that are receiving the same type of teaching. And even though it's been an amazing experience, as my eyes have been opened and I've connected to people from these different areas, including Cuba, several questions arise even before I had looked at the research for why the situation exists. Where are the female students? Why are there so many fewer female students, sometimes none in some of the countries that I've been teaching in? Where are the students from internet poor areas? Because if we're trying to offer something that is equitable or is available for everyone, what about those like my friends in Cuba and even other areas of other countries who would never be able to study if it's just offered on the internet? There has to be another kind of option. And then what about students who need food aid? And all three of those are realities in the places that I've been working. If we can help in those three areas, if we can provide covering the cost of food in the poorest economies, if we can provide childcare for a female student, and this was another discovery out of the research. Why is it so unique in Latin America? It's unique because Latin American female students don't put off having children if they want to pursue higher education. So they, in difference to other regions of the world, they don't see it as an either or proposition. They may go ahead and have their family and still have that desire to go ahead and advance into upper education. And so we need to provide a way for this to be able to happen. And then travel aid for those internet poor regions. We want to be able to help pull in students that would not otherwise be able to attend. So here's our purpose statement. I'll read through it with you. The Empty Shoes Project will empower disadvantaged students in Latin America to move up to a master's level education through childcare, travel, and food assistance offered in partnership with scholarships from an established higher Christian education program. That means that we are not asking for scholarships today. The scholarships have already been provided, have already been committed, and even with scholarship help, we're seeing empty shoes. We're seeing students that are not showing up. So here's what we want to do. We want to create access for 125 aspiring scholars in an established Christian education program. We'd like to take advantage of that situation where they come in and meet with us, and we'd like to send out resources with them to these internet poor areas. And it's an amazing digital device that provides an electronic library, but it's not internet dependent, so it can be plugged in anywhere. Students can access it even on a smartphone through a browser, and they can pull digital books, digital resources, even short films. They can pull all that onto that. And to take advantage of the connection between these new students that can be pulled in, we want to build awareness among the broader student body and raise their understanding of why it is so difficult for these other groups to participate. We want to continue to bring them in. I'm thinking of it in two words. The first of those words is pull. Let's pull those students in. Let's bring in students that would not otherwise appear. But the second one is the push element, and that happens in two ways. One of those is to send out digital resources back to these difficult areas, areas without resources, rural areas in many cases. And we also want to push that awareness into our broader student body. I think it is worth underlining. I didn't mention it when I showed the research, but I think it's worth underlining that when we're talking about these internet poor areas, the research is showing that if we try to identify only certain cultural groups without identifying the area that they're coming from, that's really where we find the most equitable use of our help through this grant. If we were to just say people from one cultural group, for example, that wouldn't tell the whole story, because if they're in the big city, they have all these resources, they have all this access. But if they're in a rural area, one example that came up was that African descendants in the country of Peru are 12 times more likely to be living in extreme poverty if they're in a rural area compared to if they're living in an urbanized area. We want to help. Here are the places we want to help. 12 countries in Latin America. It's a very broad offer. It's not in every single country, but what we're doing is taking advantage of this partnership with an existing Christian education program. These are the locations they're already teaching. And if we can come alongside and help, we can begin to prepare that digital library, which would be step one. We have to get that ready in order to be able to send it back out once we pull those students in. Phase two would be where we're receiving the nominations for the students that are going to receive all three kinds of help. Food help is a little easier to plan because that's specific to 2 countries. But child care help and travel help, we need nominations. We need local students and local reps to be telling us who is it that needs this help. And they are our best advocates to advocate for their own people. And then finally, once we can make that event happen, pull those people in, we can combine the pull of bringing in students that would not otherwise have appeared, and we can provide the push to send out resources with those students as they return to their areas. In terms of evaluation, we will be combining qualitative and quantitative feedback from each event. That is structured as surveys. Some of those are more highly structured because we're asking specific questions about the types of help they needed and which one of those were most helpful, which one was crucial to making the decision on whether or not they would be able to come study. But we also need some qualitative feedback, especially in that area of doing something new, like sending a digital library that people have not been used to accessing it. We want to find out simply from them, without asking very directive questions, what they think. And through this entire process, as we combine those responses, that will make it possible for us to measure each goal specifically. The help that's provided, as you can see, is focused on 2 countries. The largest one is Venezuela, the slightly smaller one is Cuba, and that's because the food help that's being provided is only going to those 2 nations. The total budget, the 3 largest items within that budget are the same 3 that are showing up in the goals. Food help is the single largest one, child care help is the second one, and then travel assistance is the 3rd largest. The other 3 involve the personnel that are needed and the indirect costs, and then preparing the library resources, those digital resources. As we look at it, you can really see that it's a shared opportunity. The scholarships that have already been pledged, combined with the value of the digital resources that will be going out, mean that really what we're asking for is almost like a dollar for dollar match of things that have already been pledged but will never get used unless we can find a way to pull in these students whose empty shoes we've been noticing in the classroom. And every student will also participate. Even in places like Cuba and Venezuela, students will pay a very small portion. A 95% scholarship means they would pay the other 5%. I really appreciate the opportunity to present the Empty Shoes project with you, and I hope that it's also challenged you about the needs for Latin America.